Welcome to part 2 of Marketing Wisconsin Central Intermodal, in which we continue our discussion with David Wilson, who was involved with WC's Intermodal program. In part 1, we discussed the role of the intermodal marketing companies and the usage of railroad and leasing company trailers at the time of WC's startup. The industry then made a major transition, as we will hear.
We happened to start into business at exactly the moment where there was a fundamental shift in the truckload carrier thought process, that the fancy economists, that the intermodal, that the Procters and Gambles and them, they said, in the big picture, there's going to be a big driver shortage. And we want to know, you as the truckload carriers, we want to know what you are going to do about driver shortages to make sure that we don't have any interruptions in our supply chains. And they, at that point, both the two big companies, the J.B. Hunt and Green Bay-based Schneider, each were thinking about it. And there was the famous opportunity on the Santa Fe Railroad where Mike Haverty, the president of the Santa Fe, took J.B. Hunt himself, on the business car. And apparently they had attached a J.B. Hunt trailer behind the business car, but they could still see out the windows. And JB could see that his trailer was just running very nicely, and that they went alongside the highway and look at all those J.B. Hunt trucks out there, everyone taking a driver. And the light bulb went on for JB at the precise moment where James River Paper, one of our good customers in Green Bay, was leaning on Schneider saying, what are you going to do about potentially using rail? So the two grew up together. But everything happened then in the late spring or early summer of 1992, when J.B. Hunt decided to go after the paper business in the Green Bay region.
Which was the home to Schneider. That's like Schneider's backyard, literally.
Yeah, so they, J.B. himself and Rob Krebs, who by then was the president of the Santa Fe, they came to Wisconsin Central and sat in our boardroom with Ed Burkhardt and said, we will give you, I think the number was 117 shipments each day. Now, shipments means loads or empties.
Yeah.
We didn't care.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's guaranteed equipment supply. What's not to like about this?
Right.
And so they created a haulage arrangement, kind of like a voluntary coordination thing, where we actually became an extension of the Santa Fe Railroad.
Okay.
If you look in the obscure open and prepay station list, it showed the Santa Fe as a station in Green Bay. And so in order to do this, we started a day train.
Yes. 220 and 221.
To handle all of these shipments. Well,
we also moved over to Corwith.
We moved over to
Santa
Corwith.
Fe yard,
before we get to the Corwith thing, I need to talk about the moment of drama where when this agreement was signed, it was all under a gag order. Nobody talks about this. Obviously, there was loud whispering around the industry. We were at a customer reception in Neenah when we got an urgent call from Don Schneider himself. Don said, something's going on. I need to talk with you guys now.
Oh.
And he was on his way back from someplace, and the story was he diverted the company plane from Green Bay to Appleton. I don't know what that was all about. But Don himself came to us and said, whatever is going on, we are Green Bay. You are Green Bay. We are going to be the ones working together. So, but in the meantime, in order to make this 117 a day work, we needed to move our Chicago terminal to the Santa Fe Corwith yard. And that then created a horror story. putting us a little in context, that the Santa Fe Railroad, their business mix was changing, and historically Intermodal was not known for making a lot of money. It was basically a kind of little incremental thing, but they were looking at strategically the likelihood of having 40% or more of their gross revenue coming from Intermodal. Santa Fe had to figure out how to make money on this thing, and that meant it automate everything that's possibly automatable. In order to do that, you have to have a cut and dried, regular regimen.
Yeah.
Same thing every day, cookie cutter, no exceptions.
Yes.
And then comes the Wisconsin Central, where our entire corporate culture was what I would call job shop.
Yeah. Any
customer, carload, intermodal, whoever, you come to us and you have freight to move, we'll figure out how to move it. So our problem was that we've got all these different variations, and they couldn't tolerate variations.
So if I remember right, Northwest Hardwoods at Dorchester, those were the ones where the containers the doors had to be facing out.
On a flat car that hadn't already been modified with extra safety appliances that would prevent the doors from being open. So now we've got the Santa Fe people having to scour all around the yard to try to find these cars that were satisfactory and get the pull-down engine to put them in the right order.
And then load them properly.
At the same time, we were doing a deal with the Green Bay and Western Railroad where they were going to what was our future terminal in Arcadia, where there were Sealand containers on chassis that all had to be facing the same way, and that they had to be facing south when we left the terminal, so that when we sent them to the Green Bay and Western, that they would be facing west so that they could be circus unloaded at the Arcadia terminal. But the larger problem was processes. At Canal Street, we had the same computer system as the Union Pacific.
Oh yeah, UPT.
At the Santa Fe, it was different. So for every transaction, you had to outgate it on one computer and ingate it on the other.
Geez, to throw it out, take it out of the Santa Fe account and put it in the WC account. And
so two big things were going wrong. Remember when we're saying we need every inbound load we can possibly find?
Yeah.
So we had these loads that were coming in, scrap paper coming in from various places on the Santa Fe Railroad. What could possibly go wrong? It comes in on the Santa Fe, it goes out on the Wisconsin Central. Well, one of our computers, or maybe both, couldn't interchange the trailer in the computer system without having a gate transaction, namely an actual time at the gate where the driver drove it in.
In-gate, right?
In-gate.
Yeah.
And so these shipments would come in on the Santa Fe, and then they would sit because there was no way to get them into the Wisconsin Central computer. And at one point, a person in our company suggested to the customer, you can solve that by getting a drayman, the trucking company, come into the terminal, take it out, drive it around the block, and then drive it back in. And then you have a gate transaction.
And now you're paying a drayman, though.
And another $35 or $40 or $50 adding to the transaction for sheer absurdity. And we had all kinds of absurdities like that every day we had to reconcile these goofy things. The other problem was, you talked about the flat car shortages. In addition to WC marked trailers, we had WC marked flat cars.
Oh, that's right.
We were doing the same thing as the leasing companies. They were high per diem cars. The idea is to push them out of the system so we collect all this revenue.
Right.
The Santa Fe was so sophisticated that when our train would come down from Green Bay in the morning, it would categorize the different kind of flat cars, and if it was over a certain per diem threshold, the computer would create a pick list where the Santa Fe switch engine would pull those out, and they would send them over to the Belt Railway of Chicago to send them back to Wisconsin Central in a carload train that we would get at Fond du Lac days later without any trailers on it. at the same moment that we were leaving loads on the ground because we didn't have flat cars.
Oh, jeez.
And it was one thing after another after another. It was this collision of corporate cultures that you could write an MBA case study about two companies doing in the same industry that are so different from one another that we needed not to work together. The end of it came with the fact that J.B. Hunt was never able to generate that kind of volume that they thought. Right. Gradually, they lost interest in it and eventually pulled out entirely. But in the meantime, it was so operationally bad that we just had to get out of there.
Schneider had made an occasional spot move on WC, but concurrent with the Hunt business, they began shipping regularly out of both Green Bay and Neenah. Schneider would be a strong user of WC Intermodal to the end. With the fading of the Hunt business and the issues at Corwith, WC moved back to the Union Pacific Canal Street facility in March of 1993.
We had the same computer system, and that was all good.
We knew each other.
Yeah. And furthermore, Schneider had a good relationship with the Union Pacific, so it almost replicated the Hunt convenience thing for Schneider. But eventually, volumes grew at the Union Pacific, and they were restructuring. So Canal Street was less and less important, and eventually they gave us our eviction notice.
Right.
That okay, we can't host you anymore. And at that point, we had a decision to make. We could either go to Harvey, to the Illinois Central, who did have the same computer system as we did, or by that time we were developing a pretty good relationship with CSX. So actually right up until the days before we moved,
Bedford Park,
that we didn't know yet were we going to Bedford Park or Harvey. So we went to Harvey, and it made a lot of sense in terms of, especially made sense in light of how things totally ended up. But also it was another place with the same computer system where it was just an easy transfer.
So you wanted to talk about one particular move, Alliance Shippers, the big Procter & Gamble outbound move from Green Bay.
Right. The industry was changing. We talked about the free-running trailers starting to have a problem. We talked about equipment supply being a big deal.
Yeah.
Then one day, a fellow by the name of Alexander B. McWatt from a big muckety-muck in Procter & Gamble called us up and said, we would like to have a three-way meeting to move Procter & Gamble product out of Green Bay in American President Lines containers. Now, there's two big things about this. One is domestic containers. We had not had any experience with domestic containers. It was all trailers. But the industry was moving quickly away from trailers, whether they be free running or any other kind, containers, because they didn't want transcontinental moves of wheels on wheels. They're trying to eliminate tear weight. So, Alexander B. McWatt approached Alliance Shippers and said, P&G's got this big place in Green Bay. Wisconsin Central is right there. Let's make this work. They set up this move that was a dream move for us because it was guaranteed equipment supply. It was their problem, not ours. The second thing is we got to charge them $100 to reposition each empty container up there. Then the loaded move back down. And that turned out to be a dream move. But at the same time, that was also when that kind of move was starting the truckload carriers to start thinking about kind of doing the same thing. Right. So this one, went down to Canal Street, and as I remember right then, it was a really good move for everybody concerned because I think most of those, if not all of them, went to the West Coast on the Union Pacific.
Perfect.
So it solidified our relationship at Canal Street, it solved the equipment supply, and it got us into moving domestic containers. They were still on chassis. We had a piggy packer that lifted the trailers by the belly, but we didn't have it wasn't until J.B. Hunt that we got top pick capability. But that was kind of the beginning then of working more strategically and less transactionally. IMCs were all about transactions, and a lot of them, they'd change vendors for a nickel or a lunch. And this was a more of a move into, we have committed to one another. We're not dating, we're married.
Yeah. And then this actually really was a time period when other alliances started to form too, right? Like Conrail Mercury and...
Throughout the industry, what was changing was, it used to be there's a railroad here and a railroad there, and we just interchange right there at the point. But at that place where we meet. But in those days, the Burlington Northern, for example, was doing outreach to ramps way off their system.
BN America?
BN America.
Okay.
And they had one in Green Bay for a while, and they had them all over the place.
Right.
So Santa Fe had one in Indiana, and the whole mindset of our intermodal product doesn't have to be just on our own railroad.
Right.
So starting in 1990, we had our preliminary talks with CSX. CSX Corporation had just completely restructured and brought about this thing called CSX Intermodal.
Oh yeah, CSX.
And it was a little bit of CSX Railroad, a little bit of Sealand, a little bit of their own trucking
That's
company.
right, they owned Sealand then, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah.
And that opened up the possibility of extending beyond their market. And our paper market in Green Bay, there were a lot of railroads salivated over getting that business, because once again, it's a lot of volume because it was such light product.
Right.
Everybody wanted it. And so we worked with CSX to the point where then it took until 1994 to get all of the pieces put together. And the volume was enough, it was appropriate then for us to do a transfer job from Schiller Park directly into Bedford Park.
Yep.
But it did mark a fundamental shift once again where, hello CSX, if you want to have all of the equipment that you want to be able to load up there, make it happen. But there were others. As the industry evolved, Canadian Pacific as a company was reinventing itself, and they had acquired the Delaware and Hudson Railroad out on the East Coast. And they decided, oh my gosh, we now serve a major population center in the form of the New York area, and our railroad goes there, and we'd like to haul those paper products there. So we had a short-lived project where we brought the shipments to Milwaukee, and we interchanged with I think it was still Sioux Line in Milwaukee. I don't know what it was, but anyway, that one never really amounted to very much. But at that point, other people started jumping in. Conrail decided they wanted to do it. They liked what they saw with CSX, so let's do that too. And we got to the point where we had the camera-ready stuff for the glossy literature, and right in the middle of getting that put together in 1999, Conrail got bought. And so the Northern Lights service never happened.
But there was the Conrail Mercury program.
The Conrail Mercury was another thing where all of the railroads had a strategic problem like we did, that you wanted to evolve into a different business model, but you didn't want to alienate your traditional third-party marketing group.
Right.
So they came up with an internal thing called Conrail Mercury. It was named for a 1930s passenger train.
Right.
You knew that there were rail fans back in there driving this thing. So Conrail Mercury was basically their own in-house intermodal marketing company.
Good way to put it.
At Wisconsin Central, I learned a lot from those guys. Because our intermodal marketing companies forever cried on my shoulders. I had to practically carry a towel where they would cry on my shoulder about the rates being too high. Oh, you got to give me a better rate. You got to give me a better rate. The other conventional wisdom is if you're going to sell in Wisconsin, you better be Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. You better be able to go out on Friday night for lake perch dinner. You better be able to talk about going fishing up North Yahoo. You had to be local.
Order brandy old fashions.
Conrail Mercury had these nice fresh-faced kids that were fresh out of their MBAs out of Philadelphia. I thought, oh geez,
this isn't good.
I want a front row seat in this one. And they walked in there and they just started gathering up freight in the Fox River Valley.
Really?
Never complained about a rate or anything like that.
Wow.
I don't know how they did it, except that it was a big lesson for me that I needed to have a little bit more backbone with my intermodal marketing customers, that they were playing the violin to me and I should stop listening. So that was also, Conrail was tiptoeing into getting ready to do truckload carrier things. So while Conrail Mercury was never a really big volume player on Wisconsin Central, they were so culturally important to us.
Yeah.
Now, were there other alliances? Actually, the big one ultimately became the Canadian National, which is a story unto itself.
Yeah. So with this shift to alliances and their own equipment and everything, is that what kind of pushed the reservation idea, or how did reservations end up coming into the mix?
In the wake of Staggers Act deregulation, intermodal became more important because, well, the industry was changing. They were losing a lot of carload business to going to the highway or whatever.
Right.
And railroads all over the place were realizing that we've done intermodal, like the Santa Fe, we've done the intermodal because it was a nice little incremental side thing.
Yeah.
This is going to be more and more important to us, and we've got to figure out how we can make intermodal genuinely profitable. And part of it was to alleviate these abuses of like the free running trailers and the maintenance, but also the willy-nilly equipment distribution just here, there, and everywhere.
Well, another thing too, not to cut you off, but didn't the trailers a lot of times in the old railroad free running, they just became sitting warehouses too, didn't they? They just sit up at destination and be abused for days at a time.
If I might interject a funny story from when I was majoring in transportation at Kent State University back in the early 70s. We had a lecture about this guy that would order intermodal trailers down in Georgia to ship watermelons. Mm-hmm. And he'd order the trailer and it would come out and they would actually get placed right out in the fields, and they put it was the refrigerated trailer. And they would put the watermelons in it, and then the trailer would get rejected. Well, what was the problem? There was no problem. He just wanted the trailer, and it was the demurrage charge for use of the trailer was less than what it would have been to hire or to put up a special refrigerated warehouse, especially because this thing's mobile. And so there were the abuses. We could have a whole thing about just the abuses of free running trailers, and we won't. But the industry recognized that we have to do it differently. And the second thing that happened was computerization. That when everything was manual, you had to keep it fairly simple, but when it was computerized, then you could have reservations. And then you could, especially with electronic data interchange that started to happen in the 80s, that now you had data management and data transmission capability that you could do a lot more sophisticated things. And the industry also realized you couldn't be balkanized individual railroads. You had to work together. So several companies, I hope I've got it right, Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific and maybe somebody else, went together on an experimental program called the Equipment Management Pool. Trailers are on their way out.
Oh, EMP.
EMP. That's what EMP stood for.
Yep.
And so it's going to be restricted to our railroads, but some other railroads could sign up, but they just weren't members of the club. They were,
right.
But it was all computerized. It was a centralized location. You want an empty EMP trailer to load, you make a reservation, and that's what the intermodal marketing companies had to do. And so that it caught on, and they were able to then start doing it more efficiently, and also it rationalized the problem at times of real crunch time, the last week of October or November or so, that it got away from the first come first serve thing, and so that the loyal customers who'd been there all year long have gotten squeezed out because all of the nickel and dime people come in and taken the equipment. So EMP was actually quite a successful thing. At the same time as some of these other things, like the CSXU containers, they were confined to the CSX network. But now Norfolk Southern could have one without having to have a whole CSX type organization.
Right.
So that then started in, if I remember right, probably about 1990 or so. No, not much later. 1999 or so. Conrail got into it, various others. And then Burlington Northern had done the BNAU containers for a while, and
BN America.
the BN America containers. Well, companies kind of go in and out of philosophical things about how they should do business.
Right.
They went together with whoever they went together with to start another one called North American Container Service, NACS, that was facetiously known as not another container service. But they were the future. But now the pressure was building and building and building to do these not on chassis. Chassis management is a nightmare unto itself. And if you're going to have an efficient intermodal program, you've got to also manage your chassis and not have these containers running up and down the railroad on chassis. When on the Wisconsin Central, when it gets to Chicago, rubber crosstowns, namely where the trailer used to get taken out by a truck and taken to the other railroad. Now somebody had to bring in this chassis and match it up and take it to the other place and then terminate the chassis, and it ran up the rubber crosstown cost a lot. And so this was an additional incentive for Wisconsin Central to stake our claim with some railroad that went to a big population center, because it's all consumer paper products.
Right.
To stake it with that company and try to tamp down this willy-nilly to this railroad and that. So the pressure was really on for us with the containers to emphasize these alliance type programs.
Okay, so you wanted to touch on
international business. As the United States balance of trade got worse and worse, especially with the Pacific Rim, you had these Asian steamship lines that were importing gobs of stuff to places in the Midwest, and now they're stuck with an empty container at the same time as we're looking around for empty equipment.
Yeah.
Hand in glove. And this ultimately, especially with Hanjin container lines, I'm going to digress and talk about how we had taken over the Green Band Western Railroad, and that we mechanized the terminal at Arcadia and Ashley Furniture, and we had gobs and gobs and gobs of Hanjin containers coming in, which meant that we could relocate them to Stevens Point, to Neenah, to Green Bay, to load back out to the West Coast. Everybody won in that, especially because we got 3 transactions out of it. We got an inbound haul to Arcadia. We got the $100 repositioning charge or whatever it was to the other terminal, and then we got the revenue coming back.
Good deal.
So international business was I can't remember now what the proportion was, but it was an important part of our business. As we started to cozy up more and more with Canadian National in the later years, I became increasingly nervous about our relationship with Caston Canada Maritime, who were very, very CP. In fact, they actually merged and became CP ships and were part of Canadian Pacific conglomerate.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was trying to cozy up to Hapag-Lloyd, who used the port of Halifax, and because we have a steel wheel interchange
Which
at
was
Harvey.
a CN point.
Yes. So, but then we got taken over before that ever became an issue.
This will bring part 2 to a close. In part 3, we will cover the growing influence of Canadian National and the end of the Wisconsin Central Intermodal program. You may subscribe here or link to other videos. Thank you. Bye for now.